Imagine a formal state banquet at the APEC summit, the kind of room filled with heavy silences, rigid protocols, and the weight of geopolitical tension. In the center of it all stands an unlikely figure, Park Jin-young, the head of JYP Entertainment, flanked by South Korean President Lee Jae-myung and Chinese President Xi Jinping. It is a surreal tableau. While most leaders are debating trade deficits or maritime borders, this conversation is centered on something entirely different: the return of K-pop to the heart of Beijing. For nearly a decade, the Hallyu ban has been an invisible iron curtain. Since the 2016 that dispute, the bright lights of Seoul's music industry have been effectively blacked out across mainland China. Huge stadium tours were replaced by quiet cancellations. A multi-billion-dollar cultural bridge was dismantled overnight. Even as recently as last August, smaller acts like Kepler found their performances indefinitely postponed at the last minute, reminding everyone that the door remained firmly locked. But then, a single sharp moment at this dinner changed the air in the room. President Lee proposed a massive, multi-agency K-pop festival in Beijing, and instead of a polite deflection, President Xi turned directly to his foreign minister, Wang Yi, and issued an immediate instruction to make it happen. Just like that, the four giants of the industry, HYBE, SMYG, and JYP, were suddenly checking their artists' schedules for next month. What makes this shift so jarring is the timing. While Japanese artists are currently being scrubbed from Chinese stages as relations between Beijing and Tokyo sour, the red carpet is suddenly being rolled out for Korean idols. It feels like a calculated tectonic shift in diplomacy, one where pop stars are being used as the primary vanguard for a presidential visit. Yet there is a lingering sense of unease beneath the excitement. Can a single government-sponsored concert truly dismantle years of socialist ideological tightening? Is this a genuine cultural reopening or just a temporary diplomatic stage prop? The world is watching to see if the music actually plays this time or if the curtain will fall once again before the first note even hits. Okay, let's unpack this. We are watching culture, commerce, and Cold War politics collide on a massive stage. We're diving deep into what is arguably the biggest diplomatic overture between Seoul and Beijing in nearly a decade. And it all hinges on pop idols.
It's just the audacity of it is what gets me. Using a K-pop concert as the foundation for a potential $49 billion currency deal, it completely inverts traditional diplomacy.
Exactly.
And what's fascinating here is that this isn't just about music. It's about high-stakes strategy. We're witnessing a tactical deployment of soft power.
So we need to look at why K-pop was banished in the first place.
Right. And why it's potentially being recalled now, and what the massive financial and ideological risks are for everyone involved in this high-wire act.
So the stage for this surprising diplomatic thaw was set during the APEC 2025 summit in Gyeongju, South Korea.
And the location, the timing, it's all crucial. This was the site of the bilateral summit between President Lee Jae-myung and President Xi Jinping.
And it was Xi's first visit to South Korea in 11 years.
11 years.
That length of absence alone tells you just how deep the chill has been between the two nations, especially since the whole thaw dispute.
Oh, absolutely. The atmosphere leading into this meeting wasn't really celebratory. It was more about pragmatic necessity. Bilateral trade has cooled significantly, and relations have been heavily strained by Seoul's, closer alignment with Washington.
So while the broader summit produced this Gyeongju Declaration, which sort of vaguely mentioned the creative industries,
the real action was in that bilateral exchange. Specifically, the decision by the South Korean government to deploy culture as its first and most prominent diplomatic tool.
I was reading this internal memo that described the intense lobbying effort by South Korean officials to make this happen. And they weren't just asking for, a return to business as usual.
No, it was much more strategic.
They were positioning the culture industry as the vanguard of the presidential visit itself. For them, the K-pop festival wasn't a concession. It was the mechanism to facilitate President Lee Jae-myung's state visit to China.
It's like using a stadium concert to prime the political pump.
And this cultural deployment was really personified by the presence of Park Jin-young,
JYP himself, the founder and, importantly, the co-chair of the Presidential Committee on Popular Culture Exchange.
Right.
The fact that a powerful cultural figure was not just in the room, but was specifically meeting with President Xi on the sidelines, that signals a profound elevation of the culture industry's role in high-level state affairs.
This wasn't a celebrity photo op.
Not at all. It was a strategically placed cultural ambassador delivering a very specific, very prepared proposal.
The proposal itself, delivered during that state banquet, was so pointed.
Yeah.
A massive multi-agency K-pop festival in Beijing.
But the critical part is the response, isn't it?
It's everything. You didn't give some vague, "we'll consider it."
He immediately responded positively, and with zero ambiguity, instructed his foreign minister, Wang Yi, to get it done. Immediately.
That immediate high-level directive is what separates this moment from all the, polite cancellations and indefinite postponements of the last decade.
It confirms that this cultural exchange isn't an afterthought. It's a key diplomatic initiative. The South Korean government sees the concert as a necessary step to warm relations for the president's visit.
And it wasn't just cultural smiles either. This whole overture was packaged alongside massive economic agreement renewals.
That's the hard power behind the soft power.
Yeah. On the sidelines, they renewed a 70 trillion won, which is about, 49 billion US dollars one yuan currency swap agreement.
And they also signed MOUs on service trade and policing transnational online scams.
So the concert is the symbolic bridge, but that $49 billion currency swap is the real heavy economic architecture being secured here.
It creates a fascinating narrative, doesn't it? The fate of these huge economic agreements is linked, at least rhetorically, to whether the big four agencies can get their acts on a stage in Beijing.
It just highlights how integral soft power has become to hard economics and regional diplomacy.
And if we connect this to the broader picture, we're seeing other tentative signs of relations improving.
Right. In the film industry, too. Director Bong Joon-ho's new film, Mickey 17, has secured a Chinese release slot.
And also director Yoon Ga-eun's The Master of the World. These aren't isolated incidents. It suggests a broader, though clearly calculated tearing down of those cultural blockade walls.
But here's where it gets really interesting when you look at the geopolitical anomaly of the timing.
The regional contrast. You have to compare Korea's sudden welcome to what's happening just next door.
China is currently scrubbing Japanese artists and content from its stages completely.
Because Sino-Japanese relations are souring over everything from maritime disputes to, historical issues.
So on one border, they're enforcing a cultural blackout, yet on the other, they're rolling out the red carpet for Korean idols.
Precisely. And this suggests that the K-pop welcome isn't driven by some sudden organic desire for foreign entertainment.
It's a calculated strategic foreign policy decision by Beijing.
Absolutely. It signals a deliberate pivot in their regional diplomacy. Maybe it's designed to drive a strategic wedge, or at least shift the diplomatic focus, given South Korea's increasingly robust alignment with the United States. Culture becomes a tool for regional maneuvering.
But we have to temper expectations. Even the officials themselves have cautioned against overinterpretation. The memory of that Iron Curtain is still pretty fresh.
It is, and the warning is stark. This process remains incredibly fragile. It's built on the shifting sand of political goodwill. We can't forget the abrupt and total cancellation of the Kep-Winter concert just last August.
That was such a clear reminder.
A potent, real-time reminder that the political switch controlling cultural entry can be flipped back to off at a moment's notice. Without warning and without recourse, this one summit endorsement, while powerful, doesn't just erase years of ideological enforcement and regulatory uncertainty.
It's the ultimate high-stakes, low-trust scenario. Everyone is smiling for the cameras, but every K-pop executive knows their next tour date is ultimately contingent on a phone call from the Chinese Foreign Ministry.
To really grasp the nature of that risk, we have to understand the foundational logic behind the ban in the first place. It goes much deeper than a simple trade dispute.
Right. The official trigger, as we all know, was political and military. The 2016 deployment of the U.S. Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System. Theater A.
Exactly. Beijing claimed the powerful radar system, although positioned for defense against North Korea, could be used to monitor China's missile capabilities.
So Theater A was the non-cultural excuse, but the retaliation was pure cultural and economic blockade.
The response was immediate and comprehensive across the entire cultural sector. Korean dramas, films, they all faced intense broadcast reviews. Often it meant substituting Korean actors with Chinese ones or just outright cancellation.
And crucially for the K-pop industry, Korean singers were barred from holding any large-scale concerts in mainland China.
It was an invisible yet extremely rigid blockade.
And the economic fallout was substantial. It really demonstrated how effective culture can be as an instrument of state sanction.
It was devastating. We have tangible numbers. FNC Entertainment, an agency managing several prominent groups, saw its valuation fall by 5% almost immediately.
Just like that.
More broadly, wholesale and retail losses across all sectors tied to Hallyu were estimated at a staggering $108.9 billion.
And the tourism sector just collapsed. Monthly South Korean tourist numbers dropped from over 900,000 to just 200,000.
These weren't minor losses. They were designed to inflict deep, immediate, and very visible pain on the Korean economy.
Which brings us to China's calculus, what analysts call the cultural security paradigm. Why hit culture so hard instead of sanctioning, say, semiconductors or heavy industry?
That's the important question, and it gets to the core of Chinese state strategy. Why use culture as a weapon? The key insight here is the specific legal framework. The culture industry is strategically exempted from most discussions under the World Trade Organization and free trade agreements.
Wait, why is culture treated differently?
Cultural protectionism is a widely recognized global thing. Many nations, particularly places like France and Canada, have long argued that culture isn't just a commodity like a steel beam or a mobile phone.
It's a matter of national identity.
And sovereignty. So national governments reserve the right to subsidize, restrict, or even block foreign cultural imports if they think they're a threat to domestic cultural integrity. China leveraged this exemption perfectly.
So sanctioning cultural content had minimal risk of sparking a retaliatory trade war.
Exactly. It fell outside the jurisdiction of usual economic protectionist policies. It allowed Beijing to inflict deep, targeted pain on a Korean industry heavily reliant on exporting content, while minimizing regulatory or economic risk to its own strategically important industrial sectors. It was a perfectly designed political shield.
So they were using a global loophole meant for cultural protection to execute a localized political sanction. But the reasoning goes deeper than just trade policy, right? It's rooted in cultural control.
Oh, absolutely. The concept of cultural security became a central pillar of CCT policy around the 1990s, right as China was opening up its economy.
After joining the WTO in 2001.
Right. China experienced this tremendous, unprecedented economic growth, but that opening also led to significant social and cultural infiltration. Chinese authorities were deeply concerned about the rapid expansion of Western pop culture, mainly from the U.S. They feared it could diminish the influence of socialist and, Confucian traditional ethics among their youth.
They saw the market opening as an open door for potentially corrosive Western ideology.
Exactly. They need a strategic buffer. And that's where K-pop initially came in, almost as a controlled, limited injection.
A vaccine. I've heard analysts call it the vaccine theory.
That's the one. Korean content was seen as palatable because it often addressed issues like generational conflict or the clash of values during modernization, things that resonated strongly with Asian nations. It was Eastern, so it was less ideologically threatening than unfiltered American pop culture.
So it could serve as a distraction, or a substitute for that Western influence.
And for a time, they saw Hallyu as a transitional tool, something to upgrade their own domestic industry while shielding against the West.
This wasn't just passive tolerance, though.
Not at all. Between 2014 and 2016, Chinese capital aggressively invested hundreds of millions of dollars into the Korean culture industry. They were actively scouting famous Korean drama scriptwriters, music producers, directors.
An ambitious effort to transplant those skills and upward China's own domestic culture industry.
Exactly. Hallyu was tolerated until it reached a point where it became too popular, too influential, and was deemed a genuine threat to China's own cultural self-sufficiency.
And value just provided the convenient, non-cultural political excuse to shut the door once that cultural tipping point was reached.
And the unintended consequence of weaponizing culture was this huge surge in public resentment back in Korea. When you attack identity, the blowback is intensely emotional.
It really is. The ban fueled a noticeable, sustained increase in anti-China sentiment in South Korea. The negative feedback loop just accelerated after 2016.
You'd see it when viewers would spot Chinese product placement ads in Korean dramas, subtly funded by that same Chinese capital. Public outrage about Chinese capital overtaking the Korean entertainment industry would just spike immediately.
And the cultural conflict got incredibly specific and personal, especially with the rise of online ultranationalism.
It did. We saw the rise of the Chinese ultranationalists, the Xiaofenhong, or Little Pinks, who used social media to spread claims that Koreans were appropriating traditional Chinese culture.
Right, the online wars over whether kimchi and hanbok were originally Korean or Chinese.
It created a serious diplomatic headache and fueled nationalist fervor on both sides. This created a vicious cycle of negative public sentiment that you just don't see when sanctions are placed on electronics or mobile phones.
It cuts right to the heart of national identity and historical pride.
It creates a moral and historical rift, not just an economic one. And while South Korea eventually found ways to move on, the ideological foundation of China's cultural security paradigm, that foreign culture must be controlled if it becomes an internal threat, that remains firmly in place.
That is the fundamental ideological wall this new K-pop festival will have to perform against. Given the pain inflicted by the ban, that $108 billion hole it blew in the economy, it's remarkable how quickly the Korean entertainment industry adapted.
They showed incredible resilience. They executed a massive strategic pivot away from the gravitational pull of the Chinese market.
Post-2016, Korean firms just systematically shifted their focus from China to truly global platforms.
Groups like BTS and Blackpink focused heavily on building fan bases in the US, Europe, and especially Southeast Asia. They rectified what was previously seen as an over-reliance on China.
They maximized platforms like YouTube, Spotify, and Netflix, developed their own platforms like Weverse,
which minimized the damage from being cut off from mainland China's state-controlled distribution channels.
That diversification saved them from ruin. The pop culture industry, the main target of the ban, recovered faster than expected because they successfully found new audiences.
But here's the interesting twist. Even with the official, rigorous blockade, Korean content continued to flow unofficially. It proved the underlying Chinese demand was still immense.
Right, shadow consumption.
It was a critical factor. We saw it clearly with shows like Squid Game. It became a global phenomenon, and the show's Dalgona Challenge became wildly popular in China, despite Netflix being explicitly banned.
So people were accessing it through VPNs, illegal distribution sites?
Or heavily edited, unauthorized clips circulating on local social media. It just shows that while the government can shut down official channels, the organic appetite for Hallyu among the Chinese population is still enormous. The demand never went away. It just went underground.
I saw this post online from a former marketing exec at one of the big four agencies in Seoul, one of the veterans who remembers the golden era before the ban. He described the atmosphere in their Gangnam headquarters right now as controlled mania. He talked about their Beijing strategy, this high-stakes gamble, where they aren't just selling albums, but renegotiating their entire market entry into a highly controlled environment.
They feel confident because they proved they could survive without China.
Exactly. But they know their profits will soar with it. When you read accounts like that, you feel the tension between corporate ambition and geopolitical fragility. It's the ultimate high-reward, high-risk play.
And the stakes are enormous precisely because of China's sheer market size. We have to remind ourselves of the potential scale here.
South Korea's relevant age demographic is about 30 million people.
China's 15 to 60-year-old demographic is around 900 million.
More than 30 times larger.
Even niche idol groups in China can boast 1 million fans on social platforms. That translates into huge sales potential.
And these Chinese fans are known globally for their intensity and their high spending, right? This market is a potential goldmine.
Analysts consistently note that around 40% of Chinese K-pop fans invest over $850 a year on their idols. They do these highly organized bulk album buys to boost chart performance.
Purchasing expensive merchandise, elaborate concert events, this willingness to spend just drives the idol economy to a whole other level.
So if the ban is fully lifted, the financial forecast for the big four SM, HYBE, YG, and JYP is incredibly bullish.
Their combined 2025 revenue is currently estimated at about 4.8 trillion won, or what, $3.3 billion?
And analysts estimate a full unrestricted reopening could boost that revenue by a massive immediate 15 to 30%. A conservative 10% lift would already push their total sales past 5 trillion won.
Okay, but let me challenge that. Given the extreme ideological control we just discussed, isn't that 15 to 30% projection based on the highly optimistic assumption that the ban will be lifted entirely without new content restrictions? That seems a bit naive.
It is definitely a best-case scenario based on full normalization, and investors are aware of the risk. However, the projection reflects the undeniable fact that even a partial opening, say, allowing 10 stadium concerts across the country, that would generate massive, immediate revenue.
The live music market alone is a huge draw.
Exactly. China's live music market was valued at $2.2 billion last year. It's projected to grow to $2.73 billion by 2027. Simply gaining a foothold in that sector accounts for a significant portion of that projected growth.
And the market reacted instantly to the send to this opportunity, didn't it?
Oh, immediately. The news of Xi's positive signal caused an instant stock rally. JYP jumped 5.07%, SM rose 1.26%, and HYBE gained 0.44% in the immediate aftermath.
From an investment perspective, there's another strategic advantage that makes entertainment compelling, right? The immunity to trade wars.
It's a big part of the appeal. K-pop stocks have shown resilience because their revenue streams come from live events, digital streaming, subscriptions, merchandise.
Things that aren't subject to traditional trade tariffs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So even if global trade tensions escalate, K-pop's core product remains relatively secure. It offers a kind of tariff immunity that appeals to investors looking for resilient sectors.
And this market optimism is being fueled by huge upcoming catalysts. The return of the biggest groups provides the perfect star power, just as this door might be creaking open.
Absolutely. We have the anticipated full group return of BTS members, with J-Hope and Jin completing their military service. They're preparing for global tours. And we have Blackpink's New World Tour starting in July.
Deploying that kind of star power into a newly accessible market would just maximize the financial impact of the thaw.
And we are seeing concrete signs on the ground. This suggests it's more than just summit diplomacy. It signals policy shifts are already being implemented at the local regulatory level.
Like the approval for the EPEC solo concert in May.
That's a landmark event. If it goes ahead, it'll be the first standalone concert by a Korean idol group in China since the 2016 ban, a critical indicator.
And there have been fan signing events by groups like Twice, IVE, and NCT since February.
Those are small in scale, but they all require direct government authorization. So it suggests a fundamental shift in regulatory attitudes is indeed underway. The industry is watching to see if the next approvals will involve stadium-scale concerts. That'll be the true test.
So the economic opportunity is massive. The logistics are falling into place. But the question of sustainability is still critical. We've established that China shut the door on K-pop when it became an ideological threat, not just a political pawn.
Right.
So what happens when K-pop returns to a China that has, doubled down on its own cultural identity through this cultural confidence campaign?
That is the core unresolved tension that undercuts all the financial optimism. The potential lifting of the ban conflicts directly with Xi Jinping's massive domestic push to fortify what he calls Fortress China. And this isn't just a passing nationalistic trend. It's a deep systemic cultural campaign embedded within socialist thought.
Can you elaborate on the elements of this cultural purification? What specifically is the CCP trying to reinforce, and what are they trying to stamp out?
Yeah. The campaign is rooted in integrating Marxist thought with China's fine traditional culture. Things like Confucianism, familial piety, collective community values.
And they're explicitly targeting industries and content deemed to be promoting corrosive social and cultural problems.
Exactly. This includes strict limits on video games, cracking down on speculative finance, and crucially, censoring media that promotes vulgar internet celebrities, lascivious lifestyles, and specifically effeminate pop stars, or what they call Nyang Pao.
They are explicitly trying to ensure the young generation retains toughness and virility and embraces a more traditional state-sanctioned aesthetic.
It's a direct, state-mandated aesthetic clash. K-pop's highly stylized, often androgynous looks, its emphasis on flawless visual presentation, and its celebration of commercialized individualism. It all runs directly counter to this ideological push.
For Beijing, K-pop's success is a visible symbol of foreign soft power that challenges the state's ability to guide the moral compass of its youth.
And this effort goes hand in hand with the powerful domestic cultural movement known as guochao.
The national tide. What does this phenomenon actually entail, and how does it actively compete with K-pop?
Guochao is a cultural phenomenon marked by a massive surge in national pride, especially among younger generations, millennials and Gen Z. It's an assertion that Chinese aesthetics, history, and innovation are sufficient, even superior, to foreign influence.
And it's driven partly by the government narrative, but it's also organic, right? Fueled by rising national confidence.
It is, and it translates into very tangible, multi-billion-dollar consumer shifts. Younger consumers are increasingly favoring domestic brands that incorporate Chinese elements like anti-sports and lining over established Western luxury brands like Adidas or Nike.
And in media, guochao means celebrating Chinese folklore, history, and scientific achievements.
The argument is, why look outward to Seoul or Hollywood when Beijing can produce something equally successful that aligns with our national values? K-pop, as a highly sophisticated foreign soft power, challenges that entire narrative.
This cultural rivalry is also deeply embedded in the mechanics of the entertainment industry itself. The domestic idol industry in China has evolved a lot since 2016, and it uses a very different structure from South Korea's polished, long-term factory system.
Yes, the structural differences reveal the fundamental conflict. The Korean model, used by the Big Four, requires extensive training, often at least 3 years of professional guidance, significant financial investment per trainee.
A rigorous filtering process with a high washout rate.
Exactly. They focus on producing a highly polished, globally competitive product. A group like 17 might release 2 high-quality, concept-heavy albums a year. It's about long-term artistic quality and global penetration.
So the Korean system prioritizes quality control, exporting a perfected product. But the Chinese structure seems to prioritize speed and rapid monetization within its huge domestic market.
That's it. China's idol industry chain is extremely short by comparison. We saw this in shows like Idol Producer, where some trainees had less than 3 months of training before debuting.
Wait, what?
Their system prioritizes rapid monetization and maximum exposure over long-term artistic development. Look at a group like 9%. They only released 2 group albums in total, yet their members participated in an average of 8 variety shows in a single year.
Making sky-high profits quickly through endorsements and domestic appearances.
Their strategy is high frequency, market saturation, and rapid revenue extraction, rather than the extensive artistic polish and global touring focus of K-pop.
Which brings us back to the sustainability issue. The Korean model is about long-term investment and global export. The Chinese model is designed for rapid domestic extraction.
And that is the crux of the core conflict. The fundamental question remains: can K-pop, a highly commercialized culture rooted in individualistic expression and aggressive global expansion, sustainably exist within a state that has explicitly censored similar content for running counter to its socialist values?
And which actively promotes a domestic replacement. Guosha.
The government is using K-pop as a temporary diplomatic tool right now. But the ideological commissars who enforce cultural security are still there. If K-pop proves too successful, challenging the rise of Guozhou, well, the door could slam shut just as quickly as it opened. The financial rewards are immense, but the threat is existential and ideological. If we connect all this to the bigger picture, we can clearly see this entire situation as a strategic, calculated use of culture by both sides.
South Korea is using K-pop as a diplomatic icebreaker and an economic engine. They're trying to facilitate a major state visit and secure these massive currency agreements.
And China, conversely, is using the on-off switch of K-pop as a powerful tool for geopolitical signaling warming ties with Seoul when relations with Tokyo sour, and, most importantly, to reinforce the state's cultural security doctrine.
So what does this all mean for the industry executives running the Big Four? They're rushing back into the largest consumer market in the world. They know their resilience proved they can survive without China.
Surviving that $108 billion hit?
But they also know their profits will soar with access to China's 900 million potential customers. They are chasing that projected 15 to 30% revenue boost.
But the ultimate control remains firmly in Beijing's hands. And those controls are fundamentally ideological, guided by the campaign for cultural confidence and Guozhou.
So we've really uncovered 3 core tensions converging at this moment. There's the sudden diplomatic thaw, signaled by President Xi's immediate instruction.
Then the monumental economic opportunity represented by that staggering market size.
And finally, the deep, unresolved cultural and ideological conflict between K-pop's brand of globalized commercialism and China's imperative for ideological purity.
Ultimately, for South Korea, the long-term sustainability strategy has already been identified and implemented: diversification. While they cautiously pursue the lucrative Chinese market, they're simultaneously focusing heavily on high-growth areas like Southeast Asia,
which offers a culturally resonant, politically stable fan base.
Right. We know Indonesia ranks first globally for K-pop viewing time on YouTube, and the overall Southeast Asian region is already a $12 billion Hallyu hub. This strategy ensures that even if that ideological curtain falls once again in Beijing, the show and the profits can continue robustly elsewhere.
That diversification is the true security blanket for the Korean wave against any future geopolitical frosts.